I feel very pleased to be with you and as well with my colleagues that I have in the panel. We'll have the opportunity to go a bit further during the session on the topics that we'll be touching today. However, maybe just a short intro on this topic and why you are receiving this information of safeguarding webinars in the context of Barnahus. Knowing the importance and of Barnahus as considered as one of the excellent model in regard to service provision, we thought as part of the Promise 3 that it will be important to see what is safeguarding and how safeguarding principles can be implemented actually, and dig in a bit more according to the model of the 4 rooms on different aspects of safeguarding within the Barnahus context. I will be sharing first my screen, and as well in the presentation you will see we'll have as well entry of what I guess you can see my screen now. Okay, now yes, I see some people nodding. So these series of webinars are organized within the Promise 3 project. Today we'll go more into details in regard to safeguarding in the context of child protection room, but within the coming months, one webinar per month actually will be exploring how it is safeguarding within the mental health room, how is safeguarding and what are the principles of safeguarding in the forensic interviewing and as well in the physical well-being. We'll have a special session, if I may say, in regard to child participation within the Barnahus, and during that webinar we'll be able to share 2 last publications that are done within seeing child participation as well in the Barnahus context. So for today, as you can see, really this illustration, it tries a bit to show what is the journey that a child goes through, even with this illustration when entering to Barnahus. And a bit further, Olivia will have the opportunity to speak more about Barnahus and really make the introduction on the service. As you can see, the 4 rooms that I mentioned actually are illustrated in this icon. So you can see the room, like with this window with a search on the forensic interviewing. We have as well the room that is more related with the physical well-being. We have the one on mental health, and as well we have the room on child protective services. For today's agenda, I will be just going a bit in terms of what is safeguarding, some general principles on safeguarding, how it is safeguarding and child safeguarding in particular considered and implemented actually within the Promise 3 project. Vesna introduced me a bit, but for the others, I have 2 hats today. I am the Child Protection and Safeguarding Advisor for Europe for Terre des Hommes, but in the same time, I'm acting as Child Safeguarding Officer for Promise 3 project. And I have been closely working with Olivia and all the colleagues actually part of the consortium of the Promise 3 to develop a bit the Promise safeguarding fundamentals, how we call it. And today we have the pleasure of having Olivia Lind Haldarsson. For everyone that have heard about Barnahus, I'm sure that they have heard as well of Olivia. Olivia, it is the Promise Barnahus Network President. In the same time, her other hat is the head of the unit of the Council of the Baltic Sea States. And she's the author of the quality standards, which will be like showing us a bit more, summarizing a long work that is done on the quality standards. The cherry on the cake for today is a voice from the practice, and we are pleased and honored in the same time to have Kim today with us. He will be really sharing from his practice how we have of a long practice, if I may add to it, how the child protective services are functioning, and will answer to some questions that I will direct to him, but again with these lenses. The webinar for today is foreseen to last for 1 hour. Of course, after this conversation and presentations, we'll have the opportunity to receive questions and reflections from your side. You can see it as well in your screen that you have a Q&A, and will be as well Vesna reading us the questions. What safeguarding mean? I think that everybody maybe that has registered to this webinar has been hearing a lot, especially the last years. The term of safeguarding has been one predominant terminology. Just shortly, I have put it here as a little story that shows a bit in a philosophical way, if I may see what safeguarding means. So there is a little story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job that somebody had to do it. And actually this job, it was everybody's job, and like to make it sure that it's done. Anybody could have done it, however, but everybody thought that somebody was doing it. So in this, actually, nobody did it, as everyone thought that actually this has been done, as it was really crucial. Of course, after realizing that nobody has done, everybody got angry when nobody did what somebody was supposed to have been done. And of course, everybody thought that anybody could do it, but just the fact that nobody realized that anybody was not doing it. Of course, as it ends up on this case is that everybody blames somebody when actually nobody did what anybody could have done it. And for me, this somehow, it really shows that, of course, we all say that safeguarding is everyone's responsibilities and should be at the core of the interventions. And but if we don't have this clearly communicated and written in policies and procedures, it is a bit confusing, and hopefully we don't end up that nobody has done it, actually, what it was supposed that everybody could do it. Just shortly going a bit on this definition on what is child safeguarding, but furthermore, you can, I will be posting a bit later in the chat some good resources that you can find in terms of child safeguarding. Of course, this definition, it comes more from Keeping Children Safe, the global alliance that are globally well recognized for their work on child safeguarding specifically. But just to highlight that child safeguarding is actually the responsibility that organizations and institutions have to make sure that the operations and programs do not harm children. And that actually through their interventions, they do not cause further harm to the children or beneficiaries, it depends. And actually just again to emphasize it, that safeguarding is not only for children, but for every organization or like institution that is working with beneficiaries. But in the same time, child safeguarding means that organization have into account the fact that safeguarding incidents should be prevented, but in the same time reported, and reporting mechanism, it is actually in place in order to address the concerns. So keeping this into mind and into the heart of the interventions for PROMISE, when we started the PROMISE project, we went through an exercise to develop somehow what we call it the PROMISE and Barnahus fundamentals. And those documents are the child safeguarding policy. We have developed the child safeguarding policy for the project, a document in particular for my commitment to safeguarding, the code of conduct, and as well a reporting mechanism. Furthermore, those documents, you can find it in the link that will be as well posting a bit later in the chat, and there you will find what somehow the consortium has been thinking, but why safeguarding it is important for Barnahus or the PROMISE network. Again, just the peak of what are some of the standards today. I will just be shortly mentioning in regard to the general standards that are considered for child safeguarding from the Keeping Children Safe Global Alliance. And they're quite simple but difficult to put it in practice, if I may say. So we have first that the golden standard that every organization should have a child safeguarding policy, stating clearly what are the principles, but as well well who are the people. So the second standard, it is, beside having a policy in written, and hopefully, and as well, it is highly recommended to be in a child-friendly version, so children can understand what it is written in there, to have appointed, assigned people for child safeguarding that will be dealing with the concerns, but as well in the same time will be taking measures and support it is provided to the survivors or for every incident that might happen. Procedures are very important, and maybe you have heard that usually safeguarding, it is kindly assumed that to be a very procedural work, so too many procedures and too many papers to sign, and people usually are a bit hesitant to that. However, procedures always help, again, with the prevention, but as well with the response part. Accountability is, of course, beside having all the policies and people assigned and procedures in place, it is very important for the organization to think of the ways and the mechanisms in place to make sure that what it is being, it is implemented, but as well accountability mechanisms are making sure that all the infrastructure, it is working, and the responsible people are taking the needed measures to prevent and as well to respond to as well to incidents and concerns. Here, I would like to invite a bit Olivia to smoothly enter us on Barnahus. What is Barnahus and what are the quality standards? So, Olivia, can you make this virtual journey to Barnahus for us?
Of course I can. So maybe just a quick comment on this slide where we see the child standing in the middle of the road, surrounded by different agencies and services that all play a role in protecting, assisting, and also investigating the crimes that may have been committed against the child. And when these agencies and different actors don't work together, it can be the starting point of a potentially harmful journey for children as they move between the different services. They talk about their violence and what happened to them to many different professionals in many different places, sometimes in intimidating settings, sometimes without respect for their privacy or their wishes or concerns. And we see that this can have a very negative impact on the child. It can cause re-traumatization of the child. It can prevent the child from disclosure. And in the worst case scenarios, it can also discredit the child as a witness in trials. So if you can change the slide. So the Barnahus is a house which is placed and organized in a way which makes children feel comfortable and safe. And you can see here that all the buildings and the places that we saw on that first slide, they now come together in this one place, which is comfortable and safe for the child. And as Alketa noted, Barnahus is often described as a place with 4 rooms, which hosts child protection, criminal investigation, health interventions, and therapeutic interventions. And they are embedded in a multidisciplinary architecture and guided by key principles such as best interests of the child, child-friendly and participatory environment, and inclusion and professionalism. And the co-located professionals have all come from their separate buildings that we saw on the first slide, and they now come to the child instead, and they practice in this house. And beyond carrying out their specific roles in their allocated rooms, they also meet to discuss, to plan and coordinate cases so that each child is actually afforded a multidisciplinary response. And because the Barnahus is flexible, that has been part of its success. It has been adapted to many different national contexts. It's really important that we have a framework for excellence in practice in place. And we say that while you can and should really adapt the Barnahus model, practice and organization to your legal, policy, socioeconomic, cultural context, you cannot depart from the international standards, the core principles and the evidence-based practice that are inherent to the Barnahus model. So setting common standards for us was a key priority, so that all Barnahus, regardless of how they are set up, really promote multidisciplinary interventions that prevent traumatization of the child, that it secures valid testimonies with high evidentiary value that are admissible in court, while at the same time respecting the procedural safeguards of both the presumed victim and the accused, and also that it complies with children's right to protection, assistance, and child-friendly justice. You can change the slide, Alketa. So at the very early stage of Promise and our collaboration, we worked together to develop the Barnahus quality standards, and they were developed on the basis of international and European legal standards, and they also draw on evidence-based practice and observations of what really works, and authoritative guidance from, for example, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. And as you can see here, all the different rooms have their own standards, but there are also some cross-cutting standards. And I won't go into them today, but I will put in the chat a bit later a link to the Barnahus quality standards so that you can read up on them. Because today we're talking about child safeguarding. And that is, of course, a central aspect to excellence in practice in the Barnahus. And it should be mainstreamed through all of the rooms and throughout the full multidisciplinary collaboration and interventions. And aspects of do no harm is embedded in all of the cross-cutting principles, in the organizational standards and standards that guide practice in the four rooms. And today we're looking at protection, which is really central to safeguarding, because this is often the place where the multidisciplinary response takes its starting point. And a number of cross-cutting principles that are relevant to child safeguarding come together in the context of multidisciplinary collaboration and the starting point in protection. So, for example, we have the best interests of the child, standard 1.1, and child participation, which is standard 1.2. And both of these cross-cutting standards principles are principles and practice at the same time. And they are important to child safeguarding because implementing those standards gives us a better understanding of the child's situation and the individual needs, including special needs. And this helps us to be alert to specific adaptations that we have to make to our practice so that we can prevent conduct, decisions and procedures that may be insensitive to the child or potentially harmful to the specific child in the full Barnahus context and practice. And child safeguarding is beyond these cross-cutting principles that are of importance to it. It's also specifically addressed in two of our standards. In standard 2, which covers multidisciplinary collaboration, it is covered under the indicators concerning internal policies. And this states that the Barnahus should have a safeguarding policy and reporting mechanism in place. And the policy should be in line with potential national legislation, and it should also cover those 4 international standards for child safeguarding that Alketa just mentioned: policy, people, procedures, and accountability. So beyond the safeguarding policy and procedure, which we place so much emphasis on here today, it's also covered in Standard 10, which focuses on the role of the Barnahus to prevent violence in the form of data collection and outreach. And this means that the Barnahus must take measures to safeguard children and to protect the privacy and data of children in the context of all their outreach work. So, for example, they have to make sure that there is safe storage and restricted access to data, and that personal information never is shared in the context of outreach. It also means that there needs to be guidelines in place for appropriate, relevant, and ethical Barnahus involvement in, for example, awareness raising, competence buildings, contributions to campaigns, studies, research, consultations, and media work. And the Barnahus must also receive training so that they are aware of and now know how to implement the safeguarding and ethical standards. So this needs to be put in place for the Barnahus, but the Barnahus can of course also play an important role in promoting child safeguarding and ethical standard, for example, with media and other colleagues. So that's a little bit an overview of child safeguarding in the context of the standards.
Thank you, Olivia. And can you let us know where people can find those resources and what is a bit to share on the vision of Promise Network on expansion or adaptation, if I may say, of Barnahus model for people who might be interested to implement it in their countries and so on?
Yeah. I will put in the chat now the link to the Barnahus network, and then you can go there and you can look at, for example, publications. But if you scroll through it, you'll find many different aspects related to the standards and all the other work that we are carrying out to promote the model.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, so this was really the entry to the Barnahus and the quality standards, but more in regard to how it is put into practice and how it is the connection between child protection, safeguarding, and furthermore, we'll be exploring it a bit with Kim. But Kim, I would like you to introduce a bit more yourself, if you'd like to share, and we can go on after.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Yes, my name is Kim Rasmussen. I'm from Denmark. I'm a leader from one of the Barnahus in Denmark. We have 5 Barnahus, and we are in close cooperation between the Barnahus. So we have the same standards and we operate the same way. So whether the child is in one side of the country or the other side of the country, they will have the same services in Barnahus. So I guess that's a good target for us from the beginning. Well, we just had our 8th birthday last month. So 8 years we have Barnahus. And that's good news. That's great. We were happy, but I will also say that we have a lot to learn still. So in the daily practice, we think of ourselves that we are good practitioners. We are specialists in Barnahus, but we also realize every day that we have more to learn. We are still curious about how to work with the child. We experience really heavy cases, and it made us look at ourselves and say, maybe we need to do more. Maybe we need more competences. Maybe we need to do something still. And I have good colleagues in Norway. They have had Barnahus in 14 years. I've been there several times. Also, 2 weeks ago, I was in Bergen, and I was so happy to hear that they feel exactly the same way. Just to say that being expert in Barnahus, yeah, that's great, but not expert enough to say that now we are at the goal. So that should be my introduction. Do you need anything else, Akita, from me before I make my presentation?
No, I think, well, thank you. You gave much more detailed information, and congratulations on your birthday as well. I didn't hear that.
Great.
So, Kim, can you let us know, we shared a bit about the do no harm principle. You have been having this principle as a paramount to your child protection services that you are offered in your Barnahus.
Yeah, of course, the safeguarding is one of the key principles also when we started this journey about Barnahus 8 years ago. Because as Olivia just showed on the slide and with the final presentation, often we saw that children was left alone, maybe not alone, but somehow alone because they had to go from one office to the next just to get the right help. So that is not a safe way to enter a child who has been abused. And we saw that children, in the beginning, we saw that children was, of course, pretty harmed with this abuse they have been suffering. And what we saw was different kind of trauma reactions. We also saw that when the child came in Barnahus, they had some crisis. Sometimes it was really a lot of crisis, and we have to do some crisis intervention. And what we realized was that in many cases we saw that the child was not in a safe environment. So from the beginning, it was really important for us to look at safeguarding, look at how to make the environment safe for the child in the Barnahus, but also when they get out of the Barnahus, it was important that they were protected. So yeah, it was really important for us from the start.
Great. And you mentioned a bit that, of course, you are working with very hard cases, and it is like, and you have a long time. Can you describe more about some of the security incidents that you have been facing, or your colleagues, while providing child protective services?
I couldn't hear all of the question. There was some delay in the sound. Akita, could you?
Yes, sure. It's better now? Can you hear me better?
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Okay. So no, I was just mentioning if you can share some of the incidents on security that you might have faced while providing child protective services from your long experience, you or your colleagues, and if you have, if you want to share it with us.
Yes, I can do that. Well, we have seen cases where, you know, let us say that a father who has been accused of assaulting the child, and he's more like, you know, a passive aggressive person. He does not respect the social services trying to make safeguarding for the child. He says to the social service he's not interested in cooperation with them, and even though the social service did not have enough to go out and take the child to foster care. So they still have to try to do something. And well, yeah, the police was also interrogating, and they had to investigate the case, and you know, everybody was, you know, in a kind of limbo. They couldn't react as they like to. So when he came to the Barnahus with the child, he also sort of violated the rules in Barnahus, because we don't want parents or others who is suspect to harming the child or abusing the child to come in the Barnahus. We think that the child should come to Barnahus having no concerns of my father is outside the door, he can hear what I say, and they are really unsecure when this situation occurred. So, but this father, he doesn't respect the rules of Barnahus, and we were trying just to say that, okay, but we have to see the child, we have to see what's happening, we have to make some observations, but also we had this dilemma that we didn't want him to come inside the house. So everybody was a little bit tense, because he was aggressive, and he also seems like he threatened the employees. So everything was a little bit chaotic. What we did was we accepted the terms that we could not force him to stay outside, so we find a good place for him to sit. And then we talked to the child. Of course, the child didn't say much in the first sessions, but we could observe something about the child, and the good psychologist could also assess some trauma reactions, and they also managed to fill out a form of assessment that could tell us more about what is the reactions for the child. So this situation, we felt like we could not protect the child exactly as we have hoped to. Several systems, both the police and the social services, was stuck in some kind of a limbo. They couldn't get further in the case, and the time was going on, and we had to do something about the child. But those observations the psychologist did in this intervention was important, and it contributed to decisions from social services to make some more safe instructions to the child. So we managed to do something, but in that day it was really a day with a lot of feelings, and also for the child a bit of anxiety, I think. So sometimes we have rules, we have statements, written statements also. We have the structure from collaboration with the police, with the social service, and then anyway, when it comes to the day, something happened, and we could not follow all those good guidelines. Anyway, yeah, it was a long story about this man, and we have more stories like it, but it's mostly it's this kind of stories we have when we see that in the house, in the Barnahus, normally we see that the child is safe, and they come with good adults, sometimes the parents, sometimes not, and and then again sometimes it all crashes.
Thank you, Kim. I think really what you mentioned, it shows somehow that the principle that's starting and it is a work in progress, that sometimes we have everything in place, all the safe procedures, but still those need to be reviewed and adapted to every context. And constant work, I think it never stops. And
yeah.
Yeah, but what is important, I would like just to highlight that you nicely said and put it, that Barnahus it is not only considering the physical safety of children, but as well the psychological safety, which makes the whole difference, that really make sure that the child, when it is there or when it is in contact with the children, like gives and transmits this psychological safety to the child, which releases definitely the anxiety and all the stresses and negative emotions.
Yeah, I'm happy that you asked the question like that, because in the beginning, 8 years ago, when we talk about safety of the child, it more or less was a question about being physical safety. So the social services also in the staff in Barnahus was, talking about how can we make sure that the child is not beaten again, or maybe that someone was stopping having sexual abuse with the child. How can we make sure that the child is physical safety? But after a short time, we realized that was not enough. Those children who come to Barnahus, they were closing for talking about their feelings, talking about their thoughts, what kind of problem they have. Maybe they experience some post-traumatic stress symptoms, and sometimes it was hard to get them to talk about it. And yeah, in assessments task we could do something, but when we have to make some treatment for the children, I guess it was a bit problematic. What we realized was that we cannot only talk about physical safeness. We also have to talk about psychological safe for the child. And what is it? Well, we have been working with this theme a few years now. I guess we are more not. I don't say that we are expert in this, but we are aware of it. And when we see social services come to the Barnahus with their cases, with the children, they have not come to this psychological safety for the child yet. What we must do, we must keep looking at the child. We must have the straight focus on the child, and make them realize that the psychological safety is quite as important as physical safety. So what is it? It is important that the child is not affected by the parent who has been abusing them. It's important that the family accept working with their problems. Maybe they also need to tell the story as it is. Yes, we have a problem in this family, and it's not for the cause of the child. It's something about our parenting. Also, we see that if it's more like trauma reactions, it's not even enough to work with the family. Maybe they have to come to foster care or live at some, the grandparents or something, someone else in the network. They have to get out of the environment who has been so bad for them in a long time. So yeah, maybe it's complicated, but it's also important to learn our the other sectors, social services, the police, sometimes also the healthcare institute, make them understand that this is important and we have to take care of it, because otherwise we cannot work properly with the child.
You, Kim, very important recommendations. I think especially for the colleagues and professionals who are here, if you can just summarize what will be your key recommendations in regard to child protective services, and for everyone who or thinks to have safeguarding as a paramount to their intervention and the do no harm principle.
Yeah, well, I've thought about that, and I'm not sure that I'm the one to tell other how to act, but I guess when I look back, I can see that we have to be brave, and we have to make efforts to stay focused on the child and put the child in center. Once again, I will mention the Barnahus model that Olivia showed. You saw that in the middle there was this multidisciplinary interagency meetings. I have one of these houses as well, where in the middle I put the child, because every time we have these meetings, the participants must give informations to the others around the table, informations about the child. They cannot expect to get any useful information with them to their task. What I mean is that the police can give us a lot of good information about the case and the child, but they cannot expect to get good information from social services who can help them in their investigation. So they have to understand that when we are there, we put the child in the center, and everything we do and everything we tell about the case is to gather information about the child, so those who can use it in their assessment or in their treatment, they can use it. So be brave and stay focused on the child. Also, when others did not have focus on the child. For instance, when the social service come to Barnahus, sometimes they are so focused on the family issues. They will make treatment to the family, and when they do that, they sometimes forget about how the child doing. So their reactions, the trauma reactions, their crisis, their wellness in school or something otherwise is not questionable. So we have to stay focused on the child. So when they do good treatment in the family and they are happy about it, then we have to say, that's great. We are happy about that. But what do you know about the child? Are you sure that you have the same focus on the child that you should have? In our legislation, it's important to look at the child and also work with those issues the child must have. So stay focused on the child and be brave to talk about it all the time. Also, when some of the others in the multidisciplinary arena don't have the same focus. I also think that being a Barnahus employee is a specialty. It's really it's a good work. first of all, but also they are so engaged, and they have so many competences, and we keep educate them. So we must accept that being a Barnahus employee is a specialty, and they have so important knowledge of the children who has been abused, and all the consequences of the abuse is crucial for the child's ability to recover. Because when we know so much about it, we can give it to those in the surroundings who are supposed to help the child and give them treatment. Yeah, the last thing I was thinking about was the good talk about physical safety and psychological safety. So if you didn't think of safeguarding as physical and psychological, I will ask you to do that. I will ask you to go into those two definitions and look at it. It's important. Both of them are equally important, if you can say that.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. I hope you can hear me better now. Is working?
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Thanks a lot. Well, I just wanted to emphasize what you mentioned, the fact that it is to be worked further on the common and shared understanding of these principles and the importance of having the child at the core. I don't have nothing to add to your conclusion remarks, if I may say, from the practice. And of course, from there, we have like inputs that are valid for everyone. As we are entering the last 10 minutes of this webinar, I will invite you to write questions or in the chat box, and of course we are here to answer. I don't know, Vesna, if we have so far, or
no, for now we don't have questions. We just have a few people who just say hello to everybody. So I already wrote it also in the chat box. So if you have any kind of question or comment, you can do it now. Nice. And it was really nice listening you, Kim. It was really inspiring. Thank you very much for connecting this physical and psychological safety. It was really nice to listen to that. Thank you.
Alketa, maybe while we are waiting to see if there are any questions, maybe I could also comment to say that I think that it was brilliant to hear Kim's examples, because I think that really shows how firmly embedded child safeguarding is in all of the rooms, and how failing to safeguard children has an impact on all the rooms, the way that we practice in the rooms and the measures that we have to take, but also if we fail to safeguard children, that it also impacts on the results that we are trying to achieve in all of those rooms. And I think also it was really interesting how you demonstrated, Kim, that it really isn't a case of that first story that we saw from Alketa, but quite the opposite here. And that it is so important that all the team members come together. This is a multidisciplinary business, and that is why Barnahus also can be so successful, because we gather all the members of that team, and it's a place where everybody can pick up on the responsibility that everybody has, both individually in their team, but also as part of the team. And I think that another thing that I picked up on that you said, Kim, that I found interesting was that you had all these policies and procedures in place, but you know, even so, you know, it just didn't help you. And one of our key recommendations is, of course, to begin with, that all the Barnahus have those policies and procedures, in place, and that the policies are formulated in a way so that they can also guide us when all else fails, that we can't operate from or depart from business as usual. And even if the policies and procedures can't help us, that we can quickly come together as a team and discuss, okay, how can we be flexible? How can the policies that we have in place help us? And how do we need to adapt to that very specific situation? So I think that was really helpful to hear Kim commenting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. We have one question.
Yes, here is a comment. Here is a very interesting approach to expanding the child safeguarding beyond the Barnahus TAC. More and more communities in the USA are implementing this handle with care approach. So there is a link there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, if you can see it in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah, that's from Chris.
We can see it.
Thank you, Chris.
Alketa, may I ask him a question?
Yes.
If there are no other questions in the comments. You spoke very interestingly about a case where a father was a concern in terms of safeguarding the child's mental and potentially also the physical well-being. Another aspect that I would be interested in is if you have had cases where there have been concerns about a staff member in the Barnahus acting inappropriately that have then raised a safeguarding concern. And if you haven't, if you at least have something in place which helps you address a situation if that would happen. You're muted, Kim. The most common thing said in a webinar, you're muted.
Kim, we cannot hear you yet.
Yeah, I have also asked to unmute. I suppose he can see that.
Not yet.
I think that Kim already knows where is the microphone, but it's, I think, something with sharing his screen, and after it, there is. Yeah, it's still here.
So maybe while we wait for Kim, because this is one of the really important aspects for us as well, that we also look within our team and that we have policies in place that also govern code of conducts for the staff, that there are whistleblowing policies, reporting mechanisms. So you also can raise concerns within the team and not only kind of focus on external concerns that the child may be exposed to. But hopefully Kim, in this very last minutes, can get his microphone on.
I think he has a problem with the connection, probably.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, but just to add on what you mentioned, Olivia, definitely safeguarding policies are not only for the children and beneficiaries, but as well for staff, and organizations are working more and more, and especially on documents that are specifically related with the protection of the staff and from sexual abuse and harassment and so on. I really, especially this is the plan actually that will be focusing in the other webinars to explore more on the safety, how Kim mentioned nicely, of the physical safety and psychological safety of the staff because it is a privilege really to work with children in the Barnahus, but as well it brings a lot of stress and frustrations from them. So I see Kim saying that I'm back. Kim, can you? Yes. Did you heard Olivia's question?
No, because I was tapping on that link. Someone in the chat was, and then my screen, I couldn't come in, so I had to start over. So what was the question?
So very quickly then, you talked about when there is an external threat to safeguarding in the and this father, but I also wanted to hear if you have any policies in place, or if it ever happens that a staff member becomes a concern in terms of the child's safety or well-being in the Barnahus, and what kind of measures you would take in that case, or if there is a code of conduct, so that we also recognize the role that we have to safeguard children in the context of our work and our meetings with the child.
Yeah, it's interesting question, Olivia, but I must say that we don't actually have any written policies about this issue. I have never heard about problems with that. I never heard of employees from Barnahus in Denmark having those kind of situations. So, but yeah, maybe we should have, because in other departments in the social service that I have, we do have policies about it. So I'm not sure why we didn't have it in Barnahus, but yeah, actually we don't. We have never seen any problems, but maybe it comes someday. So yeah, we must have it. You give me some work there.
Thank you, Kim. That's good.
It's always for the purpose of improving further. Yes.
As I said in the beginning, we learn. We are supposed to learn all the time, also even if we are 8 years old.
I think we have a question. Oh, yes, you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear one more question. It's also from Chris. It's regarding internal threats to safeguarding. What about a team member who is not in a healthy place and may be responding to children or families in a less than trauma-informed and empathetic manner?
Is the question from you, I guess?
Yeah, I can take that on.
Yeah.
I think it's like I would like to use the principles of physical and psychological safety. It is valid for both, for beneficiaries, children, and as well for staff, adults. I would say that what are the policies of care, of staff care that are in place, especially for organizations, are crucial in order to make sure that the right messages and the right approach it is used with the, but as well the care it is provided to the persons who are like not in a healthy place, or they are not feeling very well. Especially this is mostly related with how organizations make sure that their staff is taken care and they are receiving the right services and support. But in particular, I'd like to emphasize that for the cases of staff misconduct that are dealt with, it is the responsibility of the organization to make sure that the victim it is receiving, or the survivor, sometimes you can hear it on this terminology, it is receiving the appropriate services. So are crucial, I think, both of them to be interlinked. Yes, we have another question, Risna, or
no? Yeah, there is also a comment there from Olivia. Just a second, as I can see. Yeah. From Olivia, there is a central aspect of work in Barnahus is also to ensure peer support, supervision, monitoring and evaluation, so that we pick up on these kind of things both for the individual staff member and the children and caregiver. Yeah, thank you, Olivia.
And also in the Danish Barnahus, we operate with the terms of secondary trauma, and that's mostly for employees who work with traumatized people. It could be members of the Barnahus, but it could also be the police, healthcare sector, etc. And we have been a part of a PhD project a few years ago, and it was very exciting. It was EU funded PhD together with some guys from Ireland, and that project showed us that people who was working with traumatized children is secondary traumatized because of their work, and therefore we have really good conditions about these things Olivia write in the comments about support, supervision, and also evaluating how am I prepared to meet the children. Sometimes I can have some, for instance, a psychologist in Barnahus came to me and told me that she was so tired, so filled up with children who's been abused and neglect and all those kind of things. So she could not bear to take one more child into the office, and she was sad and she cried a bit. She didn't want to leave the Barnahus. She didn't want to quit. She just had to tell about how she felt. And of course, we reacted on that, and we took her out of the schedule for a time being, and then she did some other work, not having children in her face all the time, but she could do other stuff. We have some writings, we have all kind of tasks she could do, but we had to take care of her. And 2 weeks later, she was ready again to take in new cases, meeting children at their place, and then also she was happy that she had this opportunity to get well, you can say, or to restitute. So we do see people who, in line of work, they have less energy to give, and the same thing could happen if they had trouble at home with their or their personal situation. It would be the same if they come to work and they realize that I'm not doing this very good. I cannot bear to have these children in front of me. Then we take action to it.
Thank you, Kim. Olivia, you raised your hand for the final remarks or not?
Yes, just very, very quickly. I also wanted to raise a very important aspect, and that is that we do a very good job of displaying our commitment to safeguard children, to children and caregivers, so that they also know that this is an important part of our work, and that so that they are aware of that they can raise concern if there have been misconduct or inappropriate behavior or problems in the context of the services that they have received in Barnahus. For example, by ensuring that we have our child safeguarding commitments available and displayed in a child-friendly language.
Yes, thank you, Olivia. to add on that, maybe it is important to emphasize that, especially when working in an interagency context, it is important to share the same commitment as well, to make sure that children are protected, but as well the staff care it is provided, and to share the same understanding on the safeguarding principles and everything else. So I see that we are 8 minutes past 3, so I would like really to thank you all for finding the time to join us on this discussion. Hopefully it was useful for you. Again, this is more to go and dig in a bit in terms of safeguarding and how this is manifested. Special thanks to Olivia and Kim in this busy period that you found the time to join us and share from your respective practices. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you very
Vesna,
much.
the last words for
Yes.
you. For
Final words and formal one for me. Of course, thank you very much. It was really pleasure for me to be in one more promised webinar. It's always so inspiring and a lot of new things to learn. And of course, like all of the end of our Child Hub webinars, please give us a few seconds for the evaluation poll. There is also new question. If you want to be a part of Child Hub newsletter, please click yes. So we will add you to our list. And don't worry, it's kind of 2 or once per month you're receiving a newsletter with news and interesting webinars and other events. Of course, as I said in the beginning, there is possibility to receive a certificate of attending the whole series of the webinar. So we again encourage you to stay with us. The next webinar is in 15th of December, if I'm right, Alfeta, right? So please go and see if you haven't, and register, and you will receive the link for the webinar day before or on the day of the webinar. So thank you very much for everything. I wish you a really nice rest of the day and nice weekend, of course.
Thank you, and we'll share as well the recordings, and we'll have the PowerPoint presentations in the link.
Yes.
Thanks, Vesna, and have a good day.
Yes. Bye bye.